Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Flyers, in which the Sharks won 4-3 in overtime. And this was the fourth time in 5 games that the Sharks actually went past regulation, and all 4 times were actually a score tied at 3, so certainly a big coincidence there. Sharks get this overtime win, which puts them in the 2-2 range when it comes to the overtimes in those 4 times. Both wins have come in those 5 minutes of 3-on-3, while both losses have come in the skills competition, the shootout, after the 5 minutes have expired. And so I guess it seems to be in the Sharks' best interest to end that game in the 3-on-3 time, where there's, it's definitely a lot more hockey related compared to the skills competition, the shootout, in which is a bit more of a coin flip, as a lot of people like to call it. Scoring for the Flyers was Patrick, who executed and finished off a perfectly played 3-on-2, probably the best or one of the best 3-on-2s that I've ever seen played out in the NHL. At this point, it was just so perfectly played by all 3 players. There was nothing really the Sharks could do at that point. Yeah, you could say Vlasic should have blocked X pass or something like that, but the passes were so crisp, the correct movements were made. If there was, like a textbook of how to play hockey, or maybe some sort of online textbook, and there was a short clip that they showed you of how to execute a 3-on-2, they'd probably have the one from this game. Then for the Flyers, also Jordan Weal scored, as well as Jakub Voracek. For the Sharks, Timo Meier got 2 goals, Pavelski got 1 on the power play, as well as Joe Thornton, who got his first goal of the season, as well as his first goal since January of last year. Obviously, he's only played 5 games in that time span of 9 or so months, but still definitely nice for Joe Thornton, certainly a feel-good moment. First thing I'd like to talk about is Suomela, and by extension the forward lines that DeBoer ran this game. He finally reunited Hertl, Couture, and Meier after a short stint of separation against the Rangers and the Blue Jackets. They immediately paid dividends for the Sharks, as they scored that first goal of the game for the Sharks to tie up the game after Patrick's 3-on-2 goal earlier on. They then put together Kane, Thornton, Pavelski, a line that came together at the end of the Columbus Blue Jackets game. They were probably the weakest line for the Sharks in a very dominant first period, which is why they did end up getting separated as the game went on. Third line ended up being Labanc, Chartier, as well as Donskoy. Chartier in place of Suomela, as well as a fourth line of Carlson, Goodrow, and Sorensen. Now, obviously, for me, the reason why I think Carlson and Goodrow are staying in the lineup for this long is because the Sharks don't want to disrupt what is a very good penalty kill at the moment, which I'll get to a bit later. But it's interesting that Suomela gets sat out, and I think I was a bit confused with that during the first period, although Chartier actually had a pretty decent first period. But I do think it was because, and it sort of led into what the Sharks actually did during the second period. They kept Hertl, Couture, and Meier together, obviously, but what they ended up doing is they ended up putting Pavelski with Kane and Donskoy, and then moved Thornton down to the third line with Labanc and Sorensen, and moved Chartier down to the fourth line. And so what Chartier allowed the Sharks to do, compared to maybe Suomela, is have him be able to be pushed to the fourth line if, let's say, Thornton, Pavelski, Kane didn't work out, so that they could move Thornton to the third line and have Pavelski be the center of the second line. As now I'm considering Meier, Hertl, and Couture to obviously be the first line of this team. And so Chartier was probably a better option just in general on a fourth line compared to someone like Suomela. I hope Suomela doesn't sit next game and further on in the season. I still think he's probably the best option the Sharks have in terms of, over at least someone like Chartier or Goodrow or Carlson or whoever. And I want to see him play because he does have some nice offensive elements to his game. But I can see why DeBoer would have wanted to sit him out at least for tonight, especially with, how the past game went. Coming up next is Carlson/Burns. I will talk about Burns first. I think there's really no argument that Brent Burns has been the best defenseman for the Sharks this season. He's been all over the ice offensively. He has improved his defensive game from a weaker last season. And while his offensive game this game as well was actually quite strong, his defense did suffer a bit. On 2 of the goals that the Flyers did score, he was really the major reason. On the second goal, which was the one by Weal, he definitely should have been the guy boxing Weiss out from the front of the net, as Weiss basically just sat in front of Jones sipping coffee and whatever, as Jones could not see the puck flew right by him. Brent Burns definitely should have been working to box him out. And then on the third goal, Burns gets caught watching the puck again, and for some reason he goes to contest Lindblom, who's already being pressured by one Shark, and leaves Voracek all alone in the slot. So a couple misplays by Brent Burns, big misplays there, but still the offensive game does still follow, and so maybe just a short blip on Brent Burns' season that has looked very good so far. Next is Karlsson, who I think had a better defensive game than Brent Burns. Yeah, he was on the ice for that Voracek goal, but I don't blame him too much. And otherwise, it was a pretty decent game defensively and even offensively from Karlsson. You know, people are saying that Karlsson needs time to adjust and everything like that. And he doesn't have a goal yet, and so people are also calling him out for something like that. And he's actually taking a lot of shots right now. It really looks like he's trying to get that first goal of the season. But in this adjustment period for Karlsson, I'd really like him to see him get his defensive game under control first. You know, the goals and the assists, the points, they will come eventually with how skilled Karlsson is as a player. But I really think he should be focusing on getting his defensive game under control, because I'm pretty tired of seeing multiple big misplays, defensive gaffes from Karlsson every single game. You know, the guy's like a -9 or a -10 or something on the season so far. And so hopefully that can improve it somewhat, get somewhat close to an even number, because I want to see Karlsson get much more of a defensively sound game before the offense can follow. Next is the penalty kill. Just a short mention about this. The penalty kill has been superb for the Sharks for the past, 7 or 8 games where they haven't given up a power play. And with the amount of close games that the Sharks are playing at the moment, they've gone into overtime, as I said, in 4 of the last 5 games, all tied at 3. You know, if the Sharks give up a power play goal in any one of those games, they don't get the extra point. And so or the extra 2 points in the case of tonight's game as well as the Ducks game. And so the penalty kill has been very key in the Sharks actually being able to maintain a good pace in the Pacific Division standings. And actually tonight, the Sharks were actually more dangerous while the Flyers were on the power play, in my opinion at least, as they were able to get a lot of good shorthanded opportunities. And that's been something that, you know, the Sharks have been able to do so far this season. Besides the insane Coyotes, who have 7 shorthanded goals this season, I believe the Sharks are second place behind them. And they've been doing a very good job at keeping up the pressure on the defensemen or whoever the players are at the blue line to get shorthanded chances the other way. Next is Labanc, and I've been very critical of Labanc these past few games. You know, his last great game in this season came also against the Flyers, back when he had 4 assists that night, and he had another very good game. Maybe it's just something against the Flyers, I don't know, it could just be a massive coincidence, but Labanc looked quite good. You know, he's looked strong on the power play even during his struggling time, and he had a fantastic pass to Joe Pavelski, just a beautiful pass through all 4 Flyers, really, to get that game-tying goal in the second period. But he also looked quite good at even strength, which wasn't something that we've been seeing from Labanc. And so a lot of people thought Labanc maybe should sit out a game, but this past goal from against the Blue Jackets seemed to really inspire some confidence in him, and hopefully he can get something rolling this season. I said the same thing after the first Flyers game, and it didn't happen, so I don't have that much confidence in Labanc. But I guess in an optimistic world, I'll say that Labanc could get something started here, and he had some decent chemistry with Thornton and Sorensen. I actually thought that was a pretty solid line that DeBoer found in that, I guess it came at some point in the second period. Next is Tomas Hertl, and he is up here not necessarily because of his play, which again was quite strong, at least the time he got the play, but is about the injury or the supposed injury he sustained during the game from the hit to the head by Flyers defenseman Folin. You know, I was a bit hesitant in a game against the Carolina Hurricanes. I also said that Hertl, didn't play the rest of that game, and so I was a bit worried, but that was not really an injury that was completely obvious, so it didn't seem like it was going to be completely serious. But at the moment, this is a very scary point for the San Jose Sharks. Hertl, again, in my opinion, has been the best Sharks forward this season. And so with head injuries, you really never know. This could just be a precautionary measure. Hertl sits out the rest of the game and will just be back for the next one. Or in a worst case scenario, Hertl has some sort of concussion and is out for an extended period of time, multiple months. Who knows? And so this is a very scary part of the season for the San Jose Sharks. They got the 2 points. That's nice. But I really think the main thing that come out of this game so far is what is going to happen with Tomas Hertl. Hopefully it's not anything serious. Hopefully if he misses games, it will only just be a couple, sort of like Pettersson on the Canucks had a concussion, only missed a few games for them. Hopefully that would be the case. Hopefully in general he's just not injured and it was just a precautionary measure. But this could be a very bad part of the season for the San Jose Sharks, and hopefully Folin gets looked into by the Department of Player Safety to see if maybe he should get a couple games suspension just as a bit of justice. It won't really mean much for the Sharks, especially since they won't play the Flyers again this season, but still just, to send a message, I guess you could say. Finally, other players, Jones, I didn't really put him up on the board because I don't think there was really anything of note. He had an okay game. He had no chance on any of the 3 goals. As I said, Patrick was played perfectly. He could not see at all the wheel goal as Weiss was just sitting in front of him, as well as Voracek was mostly just a defensive breakdown. Didn't have much of a chance with Voracek alone in the slot like that. Otherwise was pretty solid. Made some nice saves, especially on Simmons, who I thought had a strong game for the Flyers. Made some nice saves there. And so Jones played pretty well. Jones actually been very good in this past few games. I think he's 5-0-1 in his last 6. Only loss obviously coming in the shootout against the Rangers a few days ago. Timo Meier, another player I'd like to mention, another 2 goals for him, and now he has put himself in a tie for the league lead in goals with 11, tied with players like Nathan MacKinnon, Patrick Kane, David Pastrnak. Certainly not players who I was expecting to say would be tied with Meier in terms of goals, but it's definitely very nice to see 11 goals in 14 games, a very fantastic pace. And I was cautiously optimistic at the start of the season that Timo Meier would be able to put up 30 goals, but at the pace that he's at, 30 goals seems like a very, very likely possibility, and maybe Meier could even flirt with the 40-goal mark. Would definitely be very exciting to see for Meier. This is his contract year, and so I'm sure Meier is just as excited as all of us as fans to be able to try and get to that 40-goal mark, but I'm 100% fine with him being able to do that, even if it means it's going to cost the Sharks some extra dollars, because it's just so fun to watch Timo Meier at the moment. I mean, fantastic overtime goal that he was able to score, although it was definitely attributed to Logan Couture. I thought he did a very good job at stripping Voracek from the park and of the puck, and Voracek, definitely not a weak forward, a big-bodied guy, big guys, over 6 feet tall. I think he's something over 200 pounds even as well, and very good at protecting the puck. So a nice play by Couture, getting it to Timo Meier for his second overtime goal, game winner. And Meier, I don't think he'll be able to keep pace with some of these top players, but it would definitely be not much of a surprise if he can get even somewhere close to 35 goals at this point, because his season has started off on fire. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will face off on Tuesday, their final home game of this homestand, their 4th, against the Minnesota Wild. Class dismissed.